Hello, I'm Chris Bottger and welcome back to another album review. Before we begin, the way these videos work is that I will start off talking about the album and then I will break it down song by song before finally giving my final ranking of the album and its packaging. I would like to encourage everyone to bear with my ramblings and watch the whole video, as I do, as always, have a lot to say. Today, I am going to be looking at an album that has become quite a rarity these days. 1973's Buckingham Nicks was the very first album to feature Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham prior to them joining Fleetwood Mac. This album is in the same style as the songs Nicks and Buckingham would do with Fleetwood Mac, and as such, sounds very similar. You can see both of them start to develop their own styles and sounds here, as well as catch short glimpses of future songs down the line. As such, it is hard to look at this album through a completely unfiltered lens, so I will be talking about later Fleetwood Mac songs quite a lot in this video, so please bear with me there. One last thing to note is the backing on this album is comprised of Lindsey Buckingham's guitar and a revolving cast of session musicians. Of particular note is guitarist Waddy Wachtel, who would later go on to play guitar on almost all of Stevie Nicks' solo projects. Starting off the album, we have the song Crying in the Night. Crying in the Night starts the album off with some good folksy guitar playing and our first ever Stevie Nicks song. The song is both sung and written by Nicks, and is a pretty solid song to start a career on. Nicks hasn't quite yet come into her vocal prime here, and her vocals do lean a bit more on the lighter, innocent 70s country girl side, rather than her later husky, mystical witch energy. But overall, this style works well for the song. We really are just comparing Stevie Nicks to Stevie Nicks here, so while her voice isn't quite as powerful as it will be in just a few years, that is no knock against her as she does sound quite good here. It's just a somewhat different, but still great sound. The lyrics here are in the pop rock blues style that is the main sound of this album, as well as many later albums to follow. What is a little awkward at times, with the first verse in particular showing some songwriting growing pains, this song works really well. Stevie Nicks already has her style of mixed tense heartbreaker character song down pretty well here. Indeed, I would say that Crying in the Night is essentially Rhiannon, but without the magic. Crying in the Night is not as good as Rhiannon, of course, because magic makes everything better, but this is still a really good album opener with a really good chorus. Stephanie is an instrumental track that features some good guitar work courtesy of Lindsey Buckingham. This is a track that will feel very familiar to those familiar with Fleetwood Mac, with the opening feeling quite reminiscent of the later song Never Going Back Again from the Rumours album. It's a pleasant instrumental and one that gels with the rest of the album quite well, but it leaves me with a question. Why is it named Stephanie? Is it named after Stevie Nicks? That's the most obvious answer. Is it just that Lindsey Buckingham loves naming his songs after women's first names? That's quite possible too. Is it reference to Angie by Davy Graham? Starting to get a little bit more out there for my guesses now, so I should probably stop. But still, the most important question is, how can I be a very serious YouTuber when I don't know the answer for 100% sure? Without a Leg to Stand On is the first true Lindsey Buckingham track on here. Much of the instrumental work here is similar to the previous track, but it is well delivered once again. The lyrics are some sort of metaphor about needing love and being desperate, but honestly, it's a bit unwieldy. The song is also too short in my opinion, although that is better than wearing out its welcome. For all its minor failings, Without a Leg to Stand On does work quite well within the confines of the album, and works quite admirably as an album track. We all know of that one song that needs its teammates to help carry it over the finish line, and here, Lindsey Buckingham has proven that you really don't need a leg to stand on to win the race. The next track on Buckingham Nicks is the Stevie Nicks penned, Lindsey Buckingham led Crystal. Now, I've actually already reviewed this song before, as it would reappear in re-recorded form on Fleetwood Mac's 1975 album, Fleetwood Mac. That would be Fleetwood Mac's first LP with their Golden Age lineup, and is also the next album in the Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks discography. Here is what I had to say about it in my review of Fleetwood Mac 1975. Throughout this album, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks have done a thing where Buckingham sings lead, and Nicks does a vocal harmony that is mixed significantly quieter. This adds a lot to the excellent sound and ambience on the songs that have Buckingham on lead, and nowhere is this more prominent than on the song Crystal. Lyrically, it's some sort of nice-sounding mystical country stuff, and it also features some very nice playing, especially the keyboard flourishes. Now, I'm really still not sure what the lyrics to this song mean, but they click together really well and can draw all sorts of natural and mystical images in my mind, so I'd say they're quite effective despite their obscurity. Buckingham Nicks' version of Crystal is an already very similar in form to its Fleetwood Mac incarnation, but there are a few differences between the two versions of the song. The most noticeable difference between the two is the earlier recording's lack of the synth keyboard flourishes. That said, I'd argue the more important difference is that Stevie Nicks' harmony vocals come in a lot later on the original recording. I personally think that the Fleetwood Mac version of Crystal is the superior recording, mostly due to the better production and greater prominence of the harmony vocals. But regardless, I think both versions are great songs that work really well on their respective albums. Long Distance Rental is another Stevie Nicks track, and another one of the best sets of lyrics on the album. The song is seemingly about the singer chasing some unobtainable love that she desires, but the object of said desire escapes her every time. This is likened to a sort of race, where the person that the singer is chasing is always the winner. Much like Crystal before it, Long Distance Rental serves as sort of a preview of what we would begin to see from Nicks very soon, with the lyrics starting to embrace a form of imagery wrapped up in magic and mythology. This style would later become Nicks' trademark style, and is a large part of why she remains so iconic even half a century later. Now, before we go on to side 2 of the album, I want to remind you that if you like this style of album review, to please like this video by hitting the thumbs up button below, hit the subscribe button, and consider watching some of my other videos after this one, as all these things help me out a lot. Other than Crystal, Don't Let Me Down Again is the only song on Buckingham Nicks to have an official Fleetwood Mac version. In this case, Don't Let Me Down Again appeared on the band's 1980 album, Fleetwood Mac Live. The Buckingham Nicks version of this track really isn't so different from that version, and is the only studio version of the song as far as I know. Don't Let Me Down Again is one of the best performed and most complete sounding songs on this album. The song has a really fast and hard beat to it, and is a still example of the same style of pop rock blues that most of Fleetwood Mac's big hits are in. The energy here is really on point, and reminds me of later songs like Monday Morning that have this desperate yet upbeat pop rock feel to them. Django is a jazz standard that's being covered here for some reason. We've got melodramatics aplenty with the big sad string sections and whatnot. Sure, it's only a minute long, but there's a time and a place for it, but this really wasn't it. Races Are One is yet another Stevie Nicks song. I'm beginning to think this album should have been named Nicks Buckingham, or perhaps a plate full of Stevie Nicks with a small serving of Buckingham breadsticks. Because Stevie Nicks has been certainly doing the heavy lifting throughout this album. I guess she was on some sort of wall with race metaphors when writing her songs of this album, because this is another one on that theme. While the previous song on the theme was about wanting the race, this one is more about looking back on a failed relationship. Races Are One applies the same metaphor that Long Distance Rental used, the metaphor of romantic relationships being a race with a clear winner and loser. Lola My Love starts off sounding quite a lot like The Chain, with its relatively hard beat and prominent kick drum. There isn't much in the lyrics of Lola other than the standard happy-go-lucky country man and all of the girls soporifics. This is Lindsey Buckingham's other female first name song on the album, similar to Stephanie or the later songs Oh Diane or Caroline. But didn't he know Lola was already taken? Frozen Love is the only song of the album whose writing is credited to both Nicks and Buckingham. This song has more interplay between Nicks and Buckingham than the others on the album, with them alternating lead on the verses and having more equal footing when singing in harmony on the chorus. Most of the songs by them on this album tend to have the same problem that a lot of their Fleetwood Mac songs have, which is that while they were a pair, so to speak, most of the time whoever wrote any given song sang lead and the other was regulated to backing vocalists. Frozen Love thankfully avoids this, which helps it stand out more next to the better songs on the album. This song's lyrics certainly speak to a dysfunctional relationship. The relationship seems to be one based on overdependence on one another, but also a degree of loathing. This is an interesting theme for the song, and the awful imagery of it manages to keep it from becoming too overwrought. I also want to shout out the guitar solo at the end of this song. Most of the playing on this album is more rhythm-based, with very little in the way of heroics, but here Lindsey Buckingham manages to pull out a pretty good solo that has an unmistakable sound to it. The same sound we would hear on later songs like Don't Stop or The Chain from Rumors. Alright, that just about wraps it up for the song-by-song breakdown. For my final review scores of the songs, I give Crying of the Night, 8 out of 10. Stephanie, 7 out of 10. Without a Leg to Stand On, 7 out of 10. Crystal, 9 out of 10. Long Distance Winner, 8 out of 10. Don't Let Me Down Again, 9 out of 10. Django, 5 out of 10. Races Are One, 8 out of 10. Lola My Love, 6 out of 10. And Frozen Love, 7 out of 10. Overall, I think Buckingham Nicks makes a strong case for being called the Fleetwood Mac album that never was. While there are no Christine McVie songs, and the rhythm section of Mick Fleetwood and John McVie is completely absent, this album sounds a lot like Fleetwood Mac 1975 and Rumors. Even the backings on the Buckingham Nicks album sound a lot like those from Fleetwood Mac despite the different musicians. It's interesting to hear a little bit of Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham's early musical evolution, but the most surprising thing is how complete of a package they were able to turn out so early on. Somewhere, there was a universe where Buckingham Nicks continued on as a duo, and this is considered to have been a great debut album. That's not to say the album is perfect by any means. There are lots of little flaws here or there that could have used some work. Strange jazz meanderings and giddy love songs aside, I think the largest problem with the album is how one-sided it is. Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham both wrote 4 songs here with a 5th co-written between them. That sounds pretty even, until you remember that one of Buckingham's is an instrumental. Then you remember the album's weakest track, Lola My Love, also belongs to Buckingham. Indeed, the only one of the Buckingham penned songs that can really stand on its own is Don't Let Me Down Again. This is in sharp contrast to the Stevie Nicks songs that can all stand on their own, even if some of them can do it better than others. This dynamic would carry on into Fleetwood Mac, but with Buckingham Nicks' track listing being split only 2 ways instead of 3, it becomes much clearer that although Lindsey Buckingham is quite capable of having several moments of brilliance per album, it is Stevie Nicks who is the far better and more consistent songwriter. Nitpicks aside, however, this is a very solid album, and it is quite a shame that it is hard to listen to these days. It is easy to look at this album as just a curiosity because of their later fame, but Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham's songs are actually really good. While Nicks and Buckingham's best songs are not contained within, there are plenty of great album tracks that work together very well to make a very solid album. Because of this, I'm giving this album an 8 out of 10. And to finish things off, as usual, I always do, of course, want to look over the sleeve and kind of give my comments on it. So, here you go. You have a picture of Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. Lindsey Buckingham was in his big hair phase. Poor decisions may have been made there. They're both shirtless for some reason. I don't know why. And also, although it's in black and white, there's this one little part of Stevie Nicks' hair that's colored for some reason on it. I don't know why that is evil, so... We got big yellow text that says Buckingham Nicks. And on the back, you have the same photo, except mirrored and in green. Why is it green? I don't know. Maybe it's supposed to have like a mossy aesthetic to it? I mean, let's face it, with Lindsey Buckingham's big hair, he basically could be a chia pet at this point, now that he's green. So, you know, very green, to be clear. And it is also in a gatefold sleeve. Now, there are repressings of this album from the 80s, later pressings that weren't in the gatefold, but this is the original. You've got lyrics there. And over here, you've got more of the lyrics, as well as a nice photo of Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. Not green this time, just black and white. Another interesting thing I want to point out is up there under vocals, it spells Stevie a little bit different. Stevie Nicks' name doesn't have the E at the end. Just kind of something I noticed while looking over the sleeve of this album. So yeah. There it is. Pretty good album. Kind of lackluster album cover, let's be honest. But still, not bad. Once again, if you made it this far in the video, I want to say thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you liked this video, please do try to go check out some of my other videos, as it does help me out a great deal. Once again, thanks for watching, everybody. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you in my next video.